My father's comments were reverberating in my mind, like a gunshot, as I gazed at my phone. I gave everything to your brother. I briefly believed I had misheard him. The phrases were unfamiliar, like if they were from someone else's nightmare rather than mine. The razor-sharp edge of betrayal sliced through me as my fingers clenched around the phone. My father's voice seemed too calm, as though the previous 20 years didn't matter and he wasn't about to tear up all of my hard work in one breath. The scene outside my office window blurred, and I swallowed the lump in my throat. The implications ran through my head. I had given up everything for the company, the empire we had created together, and now it was no longer mine. I see, I responded in an unsettlingly even voice. On the other end, I could hear my dad hesitating. A scream, a plea, perhaps even a fight, was what he had anticipated. I didn't give him anything, though. Elena, I know this might seem unfair. I ended the call, with the weight of what had just transpired crushing down on me like a steel cage. The silence in my office felt oppressive. My brother Ryan, the golden child, had inherited everything from my father. He'd always wanted a son. I was nothing, too. As I steadied the heat rising in my chest with a deep, deliberate breath, my eyes burned. This is over, he believes. He is mistaken. Monroe Enterprises was my father's ambition and my life's work. It was more than just a company. Working next to him as we fought our way up from nothing, I had been there from the start. I formally joined the company at the age of 19. I was the one who made the idea scalable, even though my father had the idea. More times than I can remember, I developed our investment plans, grew our portfolio, and saved us from financial ruin. However, throughout the past 12 months, things began to shift. My father started keeping me out of important meetings. I no longer received financial reports on my desk. Ryan was making decisions behind closed doors. Ryan, the pampered golden boy, the son who burned through trust fund money like it was limitless, while spending his 20s in upscale resorts and nightclubs. The business never mattered to him. He didn't deserve to be there. My father had picked him over me, though, for some reason. After years of neglect, I should have anticipated the missing reports, the private discussions between my father and his attorneys, and Ryan's newfound interest in the business. I hadn't noticed the ground moving beneath me because I was too busy managing the business and too trusting. They believed they had taken everything now. I took a seat at the mahogany desk and tapped the smooth surface with my fingers in a rhythmic manner. I was already doing calculations, going over years' worth of agreements, legal frameworks, and backup plans. Ryan and my father were unaware of the fact that I had never played this game mindlessly. I grabbed the black notebook I kept in the drawer of my desk. The actual records, the ones I had kept apart from the official books, were in there. It contained every significant choice, concealed risk, and backroom arrangement my father had undertaken. They had seriously overestimated me if they believed they could push me out and escape unharmed. This business was the result of my effort, blood, and sweat. I understood all the pressure points and weak points, and I wasn't going to let them win. I reclined in my chair and gazed at the skyline of the city. My father had assumed that I would break down at this point, which was his second error. No, I wasn't lamenting the death. I was getting ready for battle. After taking one last look at my phone, I got up and adjusted my blazer's sleeves. This was just the beginning. It wasn't over yet. That day, I left the workplace early because I needed to think, not because I was overburdened or needed time to process. In actuality, I had anticipated this. Silently, I clung to the driving wheel until my knuckles became white. New York, a place I had spent years making a name for myself in, passed me by in a fog. The city felt different today, colder. I had been cut off by my father. Ryan had prevailed, or so they believed. After pulling into my driveway, I turned off the engine and sat for a while, allowing the silence to descend upon me. Because the house was empty, it felt empty. I had never had time to establish a life outside from the business. I worked 16-hour days to ensure that Monroe Enterprises didn't fail due to my father's antiquated tactics, while my friends were getting married, starting families, and taking holidays. I now have nothing to show for my efforts. That's what they wanted me to think, anyway. I entered, tossed my keys on the counter, and headed for the study. books on negotiations and corporate strategy. The subjects I had devoted my life to adorned the walls, but they felt worthless tonight. Rather, the first reached for my notebook, the one item that had always been reliable. I opened it and looked through the pages of notes from years ago, including transactions my father had made, secret accounts, and things he never imagined I would see. I was aware of my father's shortcomings, and if he had taught me anything, it was that the person with the largest empire did not necessarily have the most power. The one who knew how to burn it all down had it. I reflected on my early years and how my father had always taught me the value of family and devotion. He had instilled in me the values of hard work, tenacity, and earning one's position in the world. Nevertheless, he gave everything to Ryan, who had done nothing to earn it, when it came down to it. Money wasn't the only factor here. Respect was at issue here. In addition, my father had underestimated me, which was a crucial error. I grabbed my phone and looked through my contacts until I found the one name I was looking for: Carter, Ethan. The individual who had assisted my father in obtaining the initial funding round, when Monroe Enterprises was merely a bar napkin notion, was his oldest friend. More than my own father ever did, Ethan was one of the only individuals who had always had faith in me. I made a call, Elena, he said almost instantly in a kind but wary tone. It's been a while, I said. I need to meet. Without holding back. It's about my father. After a pause, he let out a sigh. I figured something was going on. Meet me at the club in an hour. After hanging up, I reached for my keys. I would have changed the rules if my father had. Rain splashed across the windshield as I shut the engine and turned into the club's parking area. Old money, silent authority, the sort of place where guys in fitted suits negotiated over rare cigars and aged whiskey. That's precisely what I remembered. I was virtually raised here by my father, who allowed me to sit at his side and learn about the inner workings of the business world. I had returned to rewrite the game. Without bothering to draw up my hood, I ventured out into the rain. I didn't mind the cold. As I walked through the club's glossy oak walls and heard jazz humming softly, my heels clicked against the marble floor. Sitting in the back, nursing a whiskey, was Ethan Carter. With the same calculating gaze he had always had, a pair of keen eyes that could quickly ascertain someone's motivations, he watched me approach. He wore a dark gray suit with silver cufflinks that gleamed in the dim light. Elena, he murmured while twirling the glass he held. You look like hell. I got into the seat across from him and said, Feel like it too. He arched an eyebrow. So, what happened? I didn't mince words. My father gave everything to Ryan. Ethan's expression remained unchanged. He took a cautious sip of his drink and simply nodded. I figured something was going on. I let out a breath, felt the coil of bitterness in my chest, and said, Yeah, well, I didn't. I built that company, Ethan. I scaled it, fixed it every time it was about to collapse, and my father handed it to Ryan like it was a participation trophy. According to Ethan, Ryan never cared about the business. Exactly. That's why it's going to burn. Ethan leaned forward and put down his drink. What do you want from me? I said. I want to build something better, looking him in the eye. And I want to make sure my father and Ryan realize exactly what they lost. Ethan's expression briefly changed to one of enjoyment. Your father always said you had my ruthlessness. I gave a small smile. Then you know I won't lose. Slowly, he nodded. All right, Elena. Tell me your plan. I took my notepad out of my backpack and placed it flat on the table. As I turned the pages, Ethan's eyes became piercing. Monroe Enterprises has a major vulnerability right now, I replied. Expansion. They've been over-leveraging themselves, throwing money into new acquisitions without building the infrastructure to support it. Ethan squinted his eyes. How do you know that? I gave a faint smile. Because I built the infrastructure. I know exactly where the cracks are, and if those cracks widen, the whole thing collapses. Ethan laughed. You don't want to attack them head on. You want to let them destroy themselves. I gestured to a list of recent buys and said, Exactly. They've been pumping money into real estate and manufacturing, industries they don't understand. My father and Ryan think their name alone guarantees success. A sardonic smile curved Ethan's lips. It doesn't. I leaned back and said, No, it doesn't. When the losses start piling up and the investors get nervous, that's when I make my move. After examining me for a while, Ethan asked, and after that? When I said, I start my own firm, a leaner, smarter version of Monroe Enterprises, focused on strategic acquisitions, not just flashy headlines. Ethan's forehead raised. And you think you can pull that off? My phone slid across the table. The names of the top executives, project managers, and financial analysts who make up Monroe Enterprises' core were displayed on the screen. These are the people who actually keep the company running, I said. And I guarantee you half of them would walk if given the right opportunity. Ethan whistled quietly. You've been busy. I don't waste time. He grinned. And how do you expect to pay these people? I need funding, I informed them. And I need the right connections. And you're asking me to back you? Ethan asked, leaning back and thinking about me. Don't think of it as backing me, I replied. Think of it as an opportunity. Monroe Enterprises is going down. If you invest now, you're not just building something new, you're buying a seat at the table when the dust settles. Ethan's grin widened. You're ruthless. I learned from the best. After a lengthy moment of stillness, Ethan finished his drink and put the glass down with a crisp clink. All right, Elena, I'm in. 2 days later, I was sitting on the floor of my flat, cross-legged, with documents strewn all over the place. Over the course of the previous 48 hours, I had worked through every aspect, including the corporate positioning, the recruitment strategy, and the financial structure. I wasn't only creating a business, I had a weapon under construction. It buzzed on my phone. Danielle Carter. I grinned. Danielle was my mentor for the majority of her more than 10 years as Monroe Enterprises head of risk management. She was the one who understood the corporate battlefield the best. Danielle, was my response. Her voice was piercing. Elena, I heard what happened. It's worse than you think. Then tell me where to sign. My smile got bigger. Come by tomorrow. I'll walk you through the plan. The pieces began to fit together one by one. Ethan put me in touch with investors who were already keen to support a rival to Monroe Enterprises, particularly one who knew exactly how to take it down from the inside. I was able to obtain the first funding at the end of the week. I had 10 important people lined up by the end of the month. What's the best part? My dad didn't even anticipate it. However, Ryan was beginning to perspire. Danielle hadn't taken her ears off the floor. She informed me that, when reports began to circulate that important executives were thinking about leaving, Ryan convened an urgent meeting. He attributed it to internal sabotage. He was in a panic. He was, of course. Ryan had never been good under pressure. Pretending to be untouchable, he had lived his entire life in hiding behind my father's name. However, the fissures were now visible, and I was just beginning. Ethan called a week later. His words, I have a lead. Monroe Enterprises is trying to secure a major deal with Fairview Logistics. They've been negotiating for months. Let me guess, I responded. Ryan's handling the negotiations? Ethan's laugh was low and threatening. He's fumbling it. Fairview's getting cold feet. I grinned. Perfect. In less than a day, I was seated across from the CEO of Fairview Logistics, in a conference room with glass walls. I made sure to look the part with a polished power suit and a composed smile. Monroe Enterprises is too unstable right now, I replied. If you want consistency, if you want results, come with us. Fairview left Monroe Enterprises and signed with me 2 days later. The initial fissure in Monroe's structure. I had only barely begun. Monroe Enterprises was hurt more severely than I anticipated by the aftermath from the Fairview purchase. The headlines were harsh. Monroe Enterprises fumbles key contract. Questions rise over leadership. Monroe family in crisis. CEOs. Son under fire. I quietly enjoyed reading each piece. Ryan had miscalculated, overpromised, and finally pressured Fairview into signing a contract with my business. It was the first obvious crack in the foundation, but it wasn't enough to bring down Monroe Enterprises just yet. Ryan was failing more than that. He was falling apart. What about my dad? He was observing everything. 2 days after the Fairview purchase was public, he made his first call. My phone buzzed while I was reviewing the most recent expansion plans for my company at my new office. Father, I allowed it to ring. I picked it up right before it went to voicemail. Elena. I could sense the anxiety beneath his tight, controlled voice. I assume you've seen the news. I gave a small smile. I have. A long silence. Did you have something to do with this? I reclined in my chair and let my eyes wander to the skyline beyond the window. Dad, you made it very clear that I was out. Why would I have anything to do with Monroe Enterprises? The issue was weighing heavily on him, and he let out a groan. We need to talk. It was there. The first indication of remorse. However, I wasn't prepared to speak. Not quite yet. I'm busy, I said with ease. You'll have to find another time. I hung up the phone before he could reply. I was the one leaving him for the first time in my life. That evening, Danielle gave me a call. She said, Ryan's losing it, in a sharply humorous tone. He called an emergency meeting today, blamed internal sabotage. I grinned. Of course he did. He's not handling the pressure well. He never could. Beneath the haughtiness, Ryan had always been vulnerable. Although he held the title, he lacked the strength to support it. Throughout his life, my father had shielded him from terrible choices, bad investments, and his own incapacity. However, my father was no longer able to protect him from this. I was observing him as he drowned. I wasn't done yet either. Ethan gave me another opportunity a week after the Fairview deal. Monroe Enterprises is trying to acquire Hollister Steel, he stated. It's a big deal, would secure their position in the industrial market. And Ryan's running point on it. I grinned. Perfect. Hollister Steel was a high-risk, high-reward acquisition. After losing Fairview, Monroe Enterprises needed the contract to bolster its standing. Ryan may offer them some breathing room if he succeeded. Investor trust would be utterly destroyed if he failed. I refused to give him a chance at success. I worked behind the scenes for the following 48 hours. I had previous connections from my time at Monroe that I maintained at Hollister. Conversations were quiet. They sowed strategic uncertainties. Hollister departed from the table by the end of the week. The headlines appeared instantly. Monroe Enterprises fails to close Hollister deal. Stock prices plunge. Leadership in question after second major loss. My phone buzzed once again as I was going through the articles in my office. Father. Before answering, I let it ring 3 times. His voice was sharper this time. Tessa. I assume you're aware of the Hollister situation. Of course. Another long silence. This is serious. I know. You need to stop. I grinned to myself. Stop what? His voice became softer as he said, You know exactly what you're doing. You've made your point, Elena. Enough. I reclined in my seat. No, Dad. Enough was when you handed everything to Ryan. Enough was when you cut me out after everything I built for you. This isn't about the company anymore, he stated. This is about family. You made it about family when you chose Ryan over me. He remained silent for the duration of the line. He said, We need to talk. In person. In the end, I thought about it for a while. Fine, I replied. Tomorrow. My office. The following day, my father arrived at my office, appearing 10 years older than when I had last seen him. His face was drawn, his eyes heavy with something that nearly seemed like defeat. But his outfit was perfect. His hands were folded on the glass table between us as he sat opposite me. I underestimated you, he finally said. Yes, and you've made your point. I'm not done. His lips clenched. Elena, the company is in trouble. Ryan isn't handling it. Shocking. His eyes grew piercing as he said, You know the business better than anyone. You can still fix this. Why would I want to? Because it's your legacy too. I chuckled. No, Dad. You made it very clear that Monroe Enterprises was Ryan's legacy. He clenched his jaw. I made a mistake. Yes, you did. And what? You're just going to sit back and let everything burn? I don't have to sit back, I muttered. Ryan's already doing a fine job of that. His gaze grew gloomy. Elena, you can have it. If you come back, I'll give you full control. Ryan's done. I kept a close eye on him. Ryan's done because you let him fail. And now you want me to clean up the mess? Yes, he said in a short, low voice that was filled with silent despair. I reclined. No. His gaze expanded. What? You heard me. You're not going to help? I gave a chilly smile. Oh, I'm going to help, Dad. Just not the way you expect. His mouth tightened as he stood. Be careful, Elena. You're playing a dangerous game. I rose up as well, grinning more broadly. So are you. Without saying anything further, my father departed. The following stage had already begun. The strain was causing Ryan to collapse. He made careless, impulsive choices. Investors were becoming anxious. Once guaranteed contracts were suddenly subject to renegotiation. I was also taking my place. Later that week, Danielle gave me a call. Ryan's trying to secure a short-term loan to cover the cash flow issues from the Hollister fallout. Let him try. They're going to Fairchild Financial. My smile got bigger. Good. Fairchild Financial, who were close to Ethan, was a shark. Monroe Enterprises was granted onerous terms, including exorbitant interest rates and strict payback plans, thanks to a discreet word to the appropriate person. Having no other option, Ryan signed the deal. 3 months. Monroe Enterprises had that much time before the loan began to drain them, and I would be prepared to accept what remained when that occurred. Satisfaction curled in my chest as I reclined in my chair. Ryan believed that this was still a business matter. My dad believed that loyalty was still at play here. However, power was at issue here, and I was going to swallow it all. 3 months. It took that long for Monroe Enterprises to begin to fail. Their necks were being tightened by the Fairchild financial debt. Ryan's pitiful efforts to negotiate relief only served to exacerbate the already crippling interest payments. My father was just beginning to grasp that giving him the reins had been a deadly error, and now he was drowning in his own water. What's the best part? I didn't have to do anything. I sat back and observed everything that happened. The first significant setback occurred when Fairchild Financial made the following public announcement. Key partnerships are threatened by financial instability, putting Monroe Enterprises at risk of default. The markets responded right away. The value of stocks fell. Investors went into a panic. Suppliers began to withdraw from agreements. It was a public, lingering death, just the way I wanted it. That evening, Danielle gave me a call. Her tone was harsh with laughter as she said, "Ryan's on the edge." He called an emergency meeting with the board. And? He blamed Fairchild for the loan terms. I chuckled. That's adorable. Her voice became piercing as she said, "He's desperate, Elena. The board is starting to lose confidence." Good. And your father? I paused. He hasn't called me. He will, said Danielle. Soon. The following day, he gave a call. My phone buzzed while I was in my office, finalizing a new transaction that would guarantee my company's place in the logistics industry. Father, I didn't let it ring this time. I picked it up right away. His voice was scratchy and strained as he said, "Elena, I assume you've seen the news." "I have. Ryan can't fix this." Shocking. A long silence. "The board is threatening to take action. They're considering voting Ryan out." I gave a small smile. "Let them. You don't understand," my father remarked quietly. "If Ryan goes down, Monroe Enterprises goes with him. That sounds like a you problem." "Elena." His tone became stern. "Stop." I reclined in my chair and said, "No, Dad, you stop. You made this mess when you gave Ryan control. Now you expect me to come in and clean it up? You can save the company. Why would I want to?" His tone grew softer. "Because it's still your legacy." "No, Dad," I grew sterner. "You made sure it wasn't." Another long silence. "Finally, please," he said, "we can fix this together." It nearly made me chuckle. "No, Dad. You fix it." I hung up. Ryan took a last-ditch action a week later. In a pitiful attempt to reassure investors and calm the markets, he called a news conference. Wearing a suit too sharp for someone so obviously broken, he stood at the stage. Ryan stated, "The company is stable," his voice quivering from the deception. "We're taking steps to address the situation." Nobody took him seriously. The investors? No. The press? No. Not the board, of course. The inquiries began to flow quickly. What about the Fairchild loan? Why did Hollister pull out of the deal? What's the strategy for recovery? Ryan's responses were defensive and flimsy. He stammered through evasive promises and half-explanations. Sipping coffee and grinning quietly, I observed the entire event from my office. The headline I had been anticipating then appeared, "Monroe Enterprises Board Considering Leadership Change." Ryan finished. Furthermore, I wasn't even done yet. At 10 p.m., my father called me again. My phone buzzed while I was enjoying the view of the city lights from my balcony. I took it up. His voice was tight with desperation as he said, Elena, we need to talk. Now. I grinned to myself. Fine. The following morning, we got together at my father's place. Entering the house where I was raised seemed weird. The framed pictures of my father, Ryan, and myself that lined the walls and the shiny marble flooring felt empty now. In his study, my father was waiting for me. Sitting rigidly in the chair opposite him was Ryan as well. His typical arrogant sneer had given way to something that looked almost like dread, and his face was pale. Ryan gazed at me as if I were the person delivering the death sentence. You're a smart boy. Elena, said my dad. His eyes were keen, but his tone was measured. Sit down. I crossed my legs and sat across from them. Let me guess. You're ready to admit you were wrong? My dad's mouth clenched. We need your help. I raised my eyebrow. We? Or just you? On his lap, Ryan's hands clenched into fists. This isn't funny, Elena, he expressed. The company is collapsing. I'm aware. Ryan's expression grew gloomy. You're behind this, aren't you? I gave a small smile. Careful, Ryan. You sound paranoid. You've been working against us this whole time, he yelled. You made sure the Fairview deal failed. You pushed Hollister away. You, Ryan. My dad cut me off. His voice was low and menacing. Shut up. Ryan closed his mouth abruptly. Elena, the board is going to remove Ryan. Unless we act now, my father said, turning back to face me. And by we you mean me? Yes. I allowed the quiet to linger between us. Being a proud man, my father was not accustomed to acknowledging his own frailties. But there it was, there in front of him. I said, What's your offer? My dad's mouth tightened. You come back, take over as CEO, stabilize the company, save the legacy. And Ryan? My dad paused. He steps down. Ryan's head whirled in his direction. Dad! With his eyes fixed on me, my father said, Ryan's had his chance. Anger twisted Ryan's face. This is bullshit! He jumped up and down. She's the one who's been sabotaging us! I grinned. Prove it! Ryan's mouth parted, then shut again, as he was unable to. My dad never took his eyes off of mine. Elena, you win. I sat back and thought about it. The change of power had finished. The empire I had created, the one he had stolen from me, was being offered to me by my father. What about Ryan? He was done. However, I had no desire to save Monroe Enterprises. It was something I wanted to own. I got up. No. My dad's eyes squinted. No, you don't get to cut me out, then beg for my help when you realize Ryan isn't enough. My dad's mouth clenched. You're willing to let the company die? I gave a chilly smile. It's already dead. Ryan leaped to his feet. You selfish bitch. I turned to face him and moved closer until our eyes met. You lost, Ryan. Get used to it. Ryan's face reddened. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I turned to face my dad. You want to save Monroe Enterprises? Fine, I'll buy it. My father furrowed his brows. You? What? I'm offering to buy Monroe Enterprises. I cracked a grin. And when I own it, I'll make sure Ryan never steps foot inside it again. Ryan's eyes got bigger. Dad, you can't. My dad's eyes grew piercing. What's the offer? Full market value. In cash. 30 days. My dad's mouth became thinner. If I say no, then you can watch the company die. My dad's lips quirked. There was a heavy, long stillness between us. Then, at last, fine. My father held out his hand, and Ryan stood there, trembling with anger. I gave it a shake. Ryan's lips twisted in distaste. You're a monster. Grinning, I said. No, Ryan. I'm a Monroe. The deal was completed in precisely 28 days. To make a point, I sent the money 2 days ahead of schedule. In cash, $30 million. A surgically clean acquisition. I now owned Monroe Enterprises, the business I founded and that my father had stolen from me. Ryan failed to attend the closing at all. I believe that when I formally took everything away from him, he realized he couldn't bear to watch. However, my dad was present. He slipped the final document toward me, while sitting across from me in the sleek glass conference room, his face deliberately blank. Taking the pen, I signed my name. Monroe, Elena, CEO. Like he was seeing me for the first time, my father sat back and studied me. Silently, "You did it," he said. I did. We were silent for a long time. His gaze grew gloomy. "What are you going to do with it?" I gave a small smile. "Run it better." My dad clenched his jaw. "Ryan's not going to recover from this. That's not my problem. He's still your brother." I got up and gathered the documents. "Not anymore." My dad's eyes grew piercing. "You don't mean that." I looked him in the eyes. I slipped the contract into my folder and said, "I'm not cleaning up his mess. I'm not carrying him anymore. Ryan made his choices. He can live with them." My dad's lips clenched. "You really are ruthless." I gave a chilly smile. I learned from the best. As CEO, I started by cleaning the house. The first 48 hours were spent firing Ryan's entire executive team. The majority of them lacked talent and were hired more out of allegiance to Ryan than because they were competent. My people, who Ryan had expelled when he took over, took their position. My first call was to Danielle. Her words were congratulations, and she laughed. "How does it feel? Like it's overdue. Do you have a plan?" Of course. The restructure was finished in 2 weeks. Under Ryan's direction, Monroe Enterprises has been losing money for months due to poor financial management, costly acquisitions, and poor investments. All of Ryan's errors were undone by me. Ryan's lost contracts? I retrieved them. The transactions he botched? I renegotiated them. Who were the providers who had left? When they learned that I was in command and Ryan was gone, they returned. I walked quickly. Since I had constructed the infrastructure, I was aware of its shortcomings. I was fully aware of which markets to focus on, which vendors to pressure, and which investments to reduce. For the first time in more than a year, Monroe Enterprises made money in just 3 months. The headlines quickly appeared. Monroe Enterprises' stunning comeback under new leadership. Elena Monroe proves she's the rightful heir to the throne. In those articles, Ryan's name was hardly mentioned. Exactly how I desired it. It was not well received by Ryan. He unexpectedly arrived at my workplace 3 months after the transaction. With reluctance in her voice, my assistant buzzed me. "Elena, your brother is here." I gave a faint smile. "Send him in." As if he still owned the property, Ryan entered. The suit he was wearing was crumpled. His hair was a little disheveled, and his eyes had a crimson rim. Somehow, he appeared smaller. "Elena, Ryan." I steepled my fingers and relaxed back in my chair. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Ryan's mouth tightened as he sat down. "You got what you wanted. I always get what I want. You didn't have to destroy me." I arched an eyebrow. "Didn't I?" He clenched his jaw. "I don't understand why you hate me so much." My voice grew sharper as I said, "I don't hate you, Ryan. I just don't respect you." Ryan's eyes became gloomy. "You made sure I failed." I leaned forward and said, "No, Ryan, you failed all on your own. You were given everything, and you wasted it." His face contorted. "And now you've taken it all?" "Yes." His mouth curled harshly as he inhaled. "So, what happens now?" "That depends on you." Ryan's forehead wrinkled. "What's that supposed to mean?" I gave a small smile. "I'm not giving you a seat at the table, Ryan. But I'm not going to let you starve either." Ryan's eyes became a little wider. "You're offering me a job? Not a job." I grinned even broadly. "An exit." Ryan tensed. "An exit? A severance package. A very generous one." He opened his mouth, then shut it. "You want me to leave? I want you to disappear." Ryan's face turned red with embarrassment. His hands clenched into fists as he stood. "You can't erase me." "I already have." Ryan clenched his jaw. "Screw you, Elena." I grinned. "Goodbye, Ryan." Without saying another word, he raced out of the office. I saw him leave, and I felt absolutely nothing. That evening, my father gave me a call. "Ryan said you offered him a buyout." "I did." "And if he takes it?" "Then he's out. Permanently." My dad didn't say anything for a while. "You know, he's still your brother." "No, Dad," I said in a steady, quiet voice. "He's just another failed asset." My dad gasped for air. Elena, good night, Dad. I hung up. Within 2 days, Ryan accepted the buyout. He made no effort to resist it. After stealing the money, he completely vanished from the corporate world. Danielle informed me that he had relocated to a warmer region of Europe, most likely subsisting on the severance. He wouldn't have to work ever again, and to be honest, that's probably best for him. This world was never meant for Ryan. Yes, I was. Monroe Enterprises was more powerful than ever a year later. Profitable. Honored. I was afraid. One day, without prior notice or appointment, my father unexpectedly showed up at my workplace. I was buzzing by my helper. Elena, it's your father. After a brief pause, I said, send him in. My father entered, appearing thinner and somehow older. Time and regret blunted his sharp edges. Without asking, he took the seat across from me. Quietly, you really did it, he said. I did. He gave a small smile. You made it your own. Yes. We were silent for a long time. My dad's eyes grew softer. I'm proud of you. A glimmer of warmth flickered in my chest for a second. However, it vanished as swiftly. You should have been proud of me years ago. His lips clenched. I made mistakes. I know. After he paused, he replied, if you'll have me, I'd like to stay involved. I gave a small smile. We'll see. Despite the darkening of his eyes, my father nodded. His face was composed as he stood. Let me know. As he walked away, I remained silent. When he was gone, I stood at the window and gazed down at the city. I was victorious. I had established an empire. It was mine now. Ryan had left. My dad felt humbled. Additionally, Monroe Enterprises would never again be in the hands of another person. No power is granted. It's already taken. I had taken everything, too.